I thought I'd talk about a few verses from Kamba Ramayana, kind of one possible topic out of hundreds within the Kamba Ramayana. But just to give a taste of it, I want to say something about what is specific and new in Kamba Ramayana compared to earlier Tamil works. Kamban, we think, 12th century poet, and he knows the whole of the Tamil tradition. That means he knows what's called Sangam poetry, the very ancient poems. He knows the Sivaka Sintamani, which is an early Chola period work. But he has changed the, let's say, the techniques or the grammar of Tamil poetry in a very particular way. I should say it's my favorite Tamil book. Actually, I have a lot of favorite Tamil books, but this one maybe more than any. And actually, I think wherever one touches it, it's interesting. But I'm going to take a few verses from what's called the Chittirakuda Parlam. That is to say, it's this is in the Ayodhya Kanda. Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana, they're entering into Chitrakuta, where they're going to be living for some time. And there's a rather long section in which Rama is pointing to various things in the landscape and introducing them to Sita as if he were trying to make her feel at home somehow in this Chitrakuta. You remember, she's not been in the forest for very long, and she hasn't seen much of the world. And also, it's a wild place, Chitrakutam. And so he goes, point by point and says to her, look at this, look at that, as if he were introducing her to this new world that is going to be their home for quite some time. So these are verses in which there's a lot of discussion of the landscape. So you know that in Tamil, that's a very fundamental thing in Tamil poetry. There's, in the old Tamil grammar, there's a notion that the external landscape and the internal world of feeling and perception are linked in a completely harmonious fashion. They're isomorphic. That is to say, if you have an image from the outer world, it's supposed to suggest something about the world of feeling. I could give you want an example of that, or do you, you want, maybe just to see the difference. All right, so I'll read you one Sangam poem, just to show the technique. So Kamba Ramayana, I sing the poems, but the Sangam poetry, because we don't know how they were sung, we have no idea. So I don't sing them, I'll just recite it in Tamil and then a translation. It's a famous poem from Kurundohai. So this is Sangam poetry, maybe 2nd century, something like that. Nirunir ambal adai puratanna kodumen sireya kur uhir paravai ahal ilai palavin saran munni paharurai mudumaram pulamba pohum sirupun malayun mai ariven tori aval kana vunge. Some of that you'll understand, it's close to Malayalam. So the Talaivi, that is the heroine, is speaking. There's a series of 5 or 6 main characters in the old love poetry. This is what's called Aham poetry, Ahatinai. It's based on the series of landscapes, each landscape connected to a particular phase in the love relationship between the man and the woman. So here, we're in the landscape which is called Mullai, jasmine, and that's the landscape of the hills. And the way the whole thing develops, there's an early moment in the higher mountains where the two lovers meet for the first time. And that's the only happy time they ever have. After that, there's a whole series of states of separation, until finally, at the end, the hero comes back from wherever he's been, they get married, but then they spend their time quarreling. So this is Mulai, the jasmine thing, and we know that because this poem is about Valval, a bat. I'll read you the poem in English, okay? You heard it in Tamil. So it starts with the bat. Wings soft and bending like the outer sheath of the blue lily that grows deep in water. Wings soft and bending. Sharp claws. All day long the bat rests on the ancient jackfruit tree with its thick leaves on the mountain slope. Then it leaves the old tree behind to mourn and flies away as night falls. All of this is about the bat who lives in this jackfruit tree and stays there all day long, but when night falls and Mulai, this Mulai region, that's the moment of what they call Malai, that is to say the falling of the night. That's a moment of very intense loneliness. So when Malai comes, the bat takes off and flies away. All of that is the first, 5 lines of the poem. And then finally the Talaivi, she speaks directly to her friend, Tori. So the bat, we've got a description of the bat, then it leaves the old tree behind to mourn and flies away as night falls. My friend, I know now what nightfall means, now that I can't see him. Avarkanavunge. So, we could spend half an hour just talking about this poem, but it's a very typical poem in the sense that there's a grammatical principle which they call ullurai uvamam. That means this grammar that is inside is also correlated to what is outside. So you have to assume, if you know this poetry, that the bat that leaves the old tree behind and takes off must be like the Talaivan lover who's gone away. And so actually the poem says that the tree is feeling lonely and mourning. Pulamba, it's mourning, this tree. All day long the bat has been in the tree, now the bat's gone, and so the tree is mourning for that. And then she says, now I know what nightfall really means, right? So that's a kind of typical, is that clear to people? It's a typical Sangam kind of thing. Ulurai uvamam. What is inside and what is outside, they're very powerfully correlated. Sometimes there's a kind of little switch or an ironic distance or something, but generally speaking, the idea is that there's an intrinsic and intimate relationship between what is inside and what is outside. If you see something outside, it's got to mean something that is happening in the experience and the perception of the person who's speaking. Okay? So now let's go to Kamban. We'll talk about, they're entering into Chitrakudam, right? So there are a lot of these landscape descriptions, but as you'll see in a minute, that old principle of ullurai uvamam doesn't work. Or rather, it's been sort of very radically reconceived. So I'll read you a verse. All of these verses are rather beautiful. I'll maybe read 2 just to begin with, okay? Yes. It's probably early morning, by the way, dawn. They're walking early morning, maybe the sun is just coming up, and Rama, over and over again, he says something, a kind of sambodhana to Sita. So he says, Vardangol pun mulai madamaile, Vardangol pun mulai madamaile. That's just you, I'll go on with it first. Vardangol pun mulai madamaile, marai madama, ardanga pe vaitara vuria maidorum todaki. Tarangadorum nindraduva tandalayayoti nudange maligai tuhil kodini harpana nokai. So he's showing her something. Look, caught in every clump of bamboo, at every turn of the trail, are the sloughs of serpents. The slough is when the snake, molts and leaves behind it. So that is everywhere here. These sloughs of serpents, they're serpents whose gaping mouths can overpower elephants, black as rain. These are snakes that can swallow an elephant. Okay? So you have the sloughs, and they're in every clump of bamboo, and they're dancing in the wind, like the flags flying over tall palaces in Ayodhya, the city of gardens. Can you see them, my love, with pearls dancing on your breasts? He's speaking to her. So each one of these verses is an address to Sita. She has pearls dancing on her breasts. Look what, and he's showing her these bamboo clumps, and on these clumps, everywhere, tarandoru, there's one of the, or more of these skins of the serpents that have been left behind. And they're not just any serpents, but they're serpents able to swallow an elephant, and they're kind of black. And he says,
after that, then you could read the Tamil again, so that there's more.
Yeah. Vardankol Pun Mulai Madamaile, that's Sita. Marai Madama Ranga Pirvait Taravuri Maidorum Todaki Tadangadorum Nindradua Tandalai Ayoti Nudange Maligai Tuhil Kodini Harpana Nokai. Each one of these verses, look at this. Kanai, Kandi, Nokai. Look at that, okay? And the fascinating thing is that he thinks these sloughs of the serpents, they might remind her of Ayodhya, where there are these flags and banners flying on the top of the buildings, right? You know, they're also very fine cloth, thin, fine cloth, right? So why does he say that? There's absolutely no way that you can imagine that the snake and the elephant are referring to something that is happening in Sita and Rama and Lakshmana. There's no way that it can be like that. You'll see in a moment, I'll give you another example. But on the other hand, we have an external landscape which is obviously important to them. And he's showing her step by step. Look at this. So what does that mean? On the one hand, you could say, I'm just playing with this, you could say, maybe he's somehow domesticating this wilderness, so it's just, we're going here, we're going to be living here. It's just like Ayodhya. In Ayodhya, there were these flags, so here you have these, it looks just like that. As if he were kind of making it familiar. But also, remember Ayodhya, something very terrible happened in Ayodhya. Yeah, I don't want it. Something terrible happened in Ayodhya. So there's the snake that has swallowed the black elephant. In other words, there's some element in this landscape that they're entering which is wild and rather violent. Right? So I'll give you another example, and then we'll maybe talk about what he's doing with these natural landscapes. So the next thing he says, Salendale konda siatal tani madakada ma ulanda virdalil sindina udiratin maravar pulanda kalai tukana kunguma podil kalanda muttena vera muttimaipana kanai. Again, look at this, kanai. So he's talking about pearls. He's showing her some pearls. Where are they? Pearls are born from elephants' tusks. You know that there are many yonis for the pearl, right? There's a whole list of places where pearls come from. They come from the temples of the elephant, also from the tusks, also in the bamboo, right? On the little joints of the bamboo. And like that, there are a few more, but these are the ones that are relevant here. Here it's from the tusks. Pearls are born from elephants' tusks, and when you see them shining in blood from the body of a lonely, mad elephant slain by a raging lion, you can't help but think of scattered pearls still coated with kumkuma and sandal paste that women who have fought with their lovers have torn from their breasts. It's a complicated image. I'll try to explain it again. Right? They're walking along, and first he's shown her sloughs of the snakes. Now he says, well, just look at these pearls, and they're red. And he's seeing them. Well, where is he seeing them? Where is he showing them? It could be that there's a dead elephant that was killed by a lion. And the pearls are still visible on the tusks, right? That's what he says. You'll see them shining in blood from the body of a lonely, mad elephant. It's interesting that he's lonely. Killed by a raging lion. And he says if you see them, you can't help but think of these scattered pearls that are red because they're coated with kumkuma and sandal paste. And these are pearls that have come from the necklaces of women who have quarreled with their lovers and then torn them off and thrown them away, right? Which is a very ordinary thing in Tamil poetry. They're doing it all the time. Usually the lover has made some trivial mistake. Maybe he was 10 minutes late or something like that. And so the woman tears off these pearls and they're red because they're coated with the kumkuma. So he says, I'll read it again in the Tamil, okay? I'll read it again in the Tamil and then we'll talk about it again. Salantalai konda siyatartani madakadama ulanda virdalin sindina Udirattin madavar pulanda kala ittukkana kunguma pudil kalanda muttana vera mutmaipana tanai. One interesting thing is that he says, look at these pearls on the elephant. Verum is an elephant. But verum actually also means bamboo, which is another one of the yonis of the pearl. So it could be that there was no elephant.
Verum is an elephant.
What is that? Verum is an elephant, yeah. It could be that he's saying, look at these bamboo, then there are pearls on the bamboo bushes. So they're very much like the pearls that would come from an elephant at the tusks or on the forehead if this elephant had been killed by a lion. It's possible that there is no elephant and no lion and only the bamboo. In any case, the image is certainly very present and all that. And the image is translated into, very typically in Tamil, into a kind of aham love moment, right? But it's not a very happy moment. Even though these quarrels, wudal, it's called wudal, they're not such a bad thing actually. They're meant to be, they add the kind of spice to the love relationship, But still, considering the fact, just imagine, if you were Sita and you've never been anywhere at all except this trip into the forest, and it's dawn and your husband is saying to you, well, look at these pearls, just like the pearls that maybe, lovers have been, like that, except that they happen to come probably from some elephant that's been killed by a lion and the blood is still there. Right? So it's again some very kind of stark and dramatic and maybe violent image. It's as if he knew, well, what is it that he knows? These are landscape images. There are a lot of them. I've given you just two. I'll read you another couple of verses just to finish this little piece. But, it's as if he were saying, this is not something that applies to the internal state of the person who is looking or the person who is showing. It doesn't apply to them. In old Tamil poetry, it would have to apply. There would be a direct relationship. Here it seems to be suggesting something else. Like, for example, the fact that they're going to be living in this Chitrakutam place, which is on the one hand a beautiful place, but everybody knows that it's going to end in some great catastrophe. It's as if he knew in advance. Or the poet, thank you. The poet thinks that this is something that maybe Sita needs to hear, or maybe his readers need to hear, because Kamban is always talking to his readers. So I'm going to read you one or two, maybe just one more from this passage. And I want to talk. Do we have time? I'll talk about another few verses. Okay.
I want to ask you questions also after you finish this one.
Okay, I'll read you one more. They're going higher and higher up the Chitrakuta mountain. So here we began in the lower slopes, now it's gone up to the top. So who do you see at the top? There are these people who are called the Kodichiyar. These are mountain women, Kodichiyar. they grow things like millet, and the women are guarding the fields, and they have a world of their own. That's the old Kurinji landscape where the lovers meet for the first time, right? So things actually do become a little happier as you go up, but there are also vidyadharas and other creatures, because they're so high, they're almost in the sky, right? So here's another one of these verses, beautiful verse. So again, a complex verse. By the way, these are complex verses with complex images, but they're very easy to read. It's a miracle of Kamban that it's not a very, very complex kind of world to, it's easy to understand actually. Some great poets are like that. A lot of great poets are very difficult to read. Kamban is easy to read, even though the thought and the imagery is very complex, So, Aruhindra mama ilinu marahia kuile, he's talking to her. My gentle cuckoo, far more charming than dancing peacocks. Aruhindra mama ilinu marahia kuile. Kuru hindrilar kotichial. Tammanam kodippa uru hindranar korunar kuru hinaruvaka. Paru hindrana kinnara midunangal para. It's almost Malayalam. Kinnara midunangal. It could be Malayalam. So he says, you know how beautifully these kinnara couples can sing. They're up on the mountains, these kinnaras and kinnaris, and they sing and play the yar, right? And they sing very beautifully. He says to her, you know how beautifully these kinnara couples can sing? They can melt the hearts of those mountain girls, Kodichiyar, who are so angry at their lovers, they won't sleep with them, but who begin to feel sorry when they hear that music, So it's kind of a dramatic thing. Be good for Kuriaktam, I think, These lovers, these women are like the other ones. They're angry at their lovers for whatever reason. They're so angry, they've been quarreling, Uru Hindranar, with their korunar, their lovers. But when they hear the music, it softens their hearts, They're so angry that they won't sleep with these men, but Uruhinaruvaka, when they hear the music, they have a change of heart and they make up. And it's a kind of peaceful thing. And that's when they hear the music. And the next verse, I don't have the Tamil for it here, but I'll just read you the next verse. He says, Ramas again, you bring a sweetness to my mind whenever I think of you, my love. Listen. The mountain girls are sitting on swings hung from tiger trees and silk cotton heavy with honey, and they're singing songs in the mountain mode, Kurinji, while the asunam beast who loves music has crept up to listen. So remember, Sudha, we were reading just the other day, the Tamilians have a notion that there's an animal, a magical, mythical animal called the asunam. The asunam. He's a rasika, he's a connoisseur of music. But he's hypersensitive, this animal. We don't know what he looks like. But he's extremely sensitive, and if he hears a loud noise, for example, if somebody beats the drum, he'll die. He'll die. Or if a note out of tune or something like that, he'll die. This asurnam. Yeah. So, but you see, they're climbing up the mountain. So on the one hand, you have these kinnara kinnaris, and they're singing, and and it's working wonders for the Kodichiyar. They're coming back to you, making up, right? But if they go a little higher, you can see these girls, same Kodichiyar, they're sitting on swings, going back and forth, and they're singing also beautiful songs in the Kurinji mode. Kurinji was a kind of raga. So they're singing this Kurinji raga, and this Asuram beast who loves music, he's kind of crept up just to listen, So why? Yeah, okay. So why is he showing that? We saw those early verses. There were only 2 or 3 examples where the landscape imagery was kind of harsh. Now, as he goes higher, he's talking about the music. Actually, there's several more verses about music. And it seems to me that the reason he's talking about music is because he's talking about his own poetry. There are many places in Kamban, where he seems to be describing something, but really he's talking about himself in relation to the audience. And anybody who knows the Kamba Ramayana in Tamil knows that it's a highly musical text. Of course, it was meant to be sung like all Tamil texts. And I think, it's as if he were saying, there's a whole series of these astonishing images. It's as if he were saying, they're the words that I have. I am speaking to you, I, the poet, speaking to you through the mouth of Rama. That's unusual, by the way, because Rama doesn't usually speak very much, hardly ever talks, even in the Kamba Ramayana, but here he talks all the time. I'm speaking to you through the mouth of Rama, but what I want you to hear is the music of my poetry. He also says an interesting thing about what they can see. There's a verse which says, just as the God who cares for us slips into the world but cannot hide himself from the stern yogi who has mastered his senses, kinnaras with human bodies and a horse's face, they have horses' faces, hiding in these hills can be seen, reflected from polished crystal stones. It's an interesting thing. If you're up in those high mountains, supposedly, you can't see the kinnaras. They're invisible. They're invisible to the human eye. But you can see them reflected from the bright, glossy surfaces of the rocks, right? And that, he says, is like the way a yogi, a deep yogi, can see the God who is in the world. Actually, there is a God who's in the world, Rama himself. Yes. Right? He can see him. All the rest of us, we don't see him. He hides himself in the world, right? But the good yogi can see it. And that's like that reflection off the stones of these invisible kinnaras. And again, he's talking, I think, about the way his poetry works, You can't actually see the thing itself. You can hear the music and you can see its reflection, right? So, we began with that poem about the bat, old Tamil style, where the correspondence was really one-to-one, or almost one-to-one. And the bat is like this lover who's gone away, and the woman is like the tree that has been abandoned and is mourning, and so on. And now we're in a different landscape. Same tinais, that is, the same categories of landscape are there, but the old principle,
Did you say that it changed from the Mulai to the...
Yeah, but you have the same set. You have a set of five, the Ain Tinai. You have 5 Tinai. They have certain characteristics. Every one of them, there's the particular kind of village, and there's the animals and the flora, and the gods who are worshipped there, and the musical instruments, and the way people dress. All of these things are highly specific. And in old Tamil poetry, it's enough to mention even one of these features, the name of a flower, the name of an animal. You know which tina you're in, and you know which phase of the love relationship you're in. That's still there, except that it doesn't work in the old way. It works in a different way, in which you could say that whole story of the Ramayana is being hinted at. And I'll put it another way. If I had more time, I could flesh this out. But it's as if he were saying, Kamban were saying, they're going into a wilderness. And the wilderness has all these different things, but really the wilderness that is of interest to him is the wilderness that is the human mind. That's the real wilderness. And all of these things are there. The elephants and the snakes and the quarreling lovers, all of that. It exists somewhere. It's as if it were an attempt to produce a new way of thinking about the human mind. I wanted to read a few verses from the end of this chapter. Do we have time, or shall I? You sure? Yeah. Okay. But you also wanted to ask a question about it.
Now you have answered it actually. I was asking about this correlation between when you're showing nature to the beauties of nature to Sita. So how is it that these kind of imagery strike? But you said just now about
I think it's
the wilderness in the mind, and that's.
in my way of talking about it, just me, but I would say there's been a new grammar. A new grammar has been invented using the same materials of the old grammar, but for a different purpose. And actually it amounts to a kind of revolution in the literary taste and sensibility and so on. He didn't do it all by himself, Kamban. He's coming out of the poems of Nammarvar, the Tiruvaimori, and also to some extent I think of Tirutaka Deva, that is the Zivaka Sintamani. All of these fed into what he was doing. Nonetheless, there's a sense of a very dramatic kind of breakthrough. Right? It's a new world, a new kind of Tamil culture. So, okay, so this is at the end of this same Chitrakuta chapter. They eventually arrive at Panjavati, and Lakshmana builds the Parnashala. It's a little bit like we saw it in Kudiyattam. You know, there's a long description of how he builds the Parnashala. I won't read it to you, but everything is there. The wooden beams and the floor and the windows and the rafters and the pillars. It's all there, piece by piece. With the very interesting vocabulary, by the way, in Tamil. These are words that we don't have from anywhere else. So all of this is described. And in the end, he invites Rama and Sita to enter into the Parnashala. Right? First of all, it's very interesting to see that this is coming out of that same entrance into Chitrakuta. You know, they're related, these two things. So here's another moment where Rama speaks and Lakshmana speaks. Sita says nothing. But the two brothers speak, and they say some very, very unusual things to one another. They speak in ways that include like a huge dimension of what is not being said. And that's what you have to listen to here. So I'll read you just 2 or 3 of these verses. Here's one, I don't have the Tamil for this one with me. I'll read it to you in English. Rama thought, he's come into the house. He's amazed at this Parnashala, you know. He says, Rama thought to himself, the feet, softer than flowers, of this Mithila princess walked through the wilderness, and the hands of my flawless brother built this home. There's nothing that those who have nothing cannot do. Beautiful phrase. There's nothing that those who have nothing cannot do. Yeah? It's a beautiful verse, an unusual verse, I think, you know. So then,
read that again, please?
In English, I can only read it, yeah. Yeah, Rama thought, the feet softer than flowers of this Mithila princess walked through the wilderness, and the hands of my flawless brother built this home. There's nothing that those who have nothing cannot do. Yeah, nice thought, actually. Yeah, put that. So then he looked at his brother. He said, true, your arms are strong as 2 great mountains, but when did you learn how to do this? As he said it, his eyes filled with tears. And now a very critical verse comes. Rama is still speaking to Lakshmana, and he says, Ardalun shelva marittavananayil, padurunalaram palitiravil, surarume puharsurinan, yenbaden, people will say of me that I followed my father's command when he gave away the rich kingdom, that I did what was right and I was crowned with fame, puhar, me puhar, brighter than the sun. Iravayil sudarum me puhar surinan. I was crowned with a fame brighter than the sun. People will say, Yenbelen, and so what? What's it worth when I've caused you such sorrow? That's an unusual thing for Rama to say. Everybody always thinks that, you know, Rama did the right thing. He almost always does the right thing. Right? It's supposed to be the person who does the right thing. His father said, go to the forest. Yeah, okay, yeah. He did it. He said, people will say I did the right thing. This is Kamban speaking. It's an unusual statement. They'll say that, but then what's the point of saying that? So what? You know, why even bother to say that? Ira runaka iraiten. I caused you huge sorrow. Inga, in this way. Nan. Finishes. The verse ends on the word na. I caused you huge sorrow. It's as if he was saying, it wasn't worth it. Actually, it wasn't worth it at all. All of this thing. Maybe he made a mistake, you know? And then Lakshmana answers, Anda vaimori ayani ambalum, nonda sindai layavan nokinal, Yendai kandi, idarine kanguram mundi vande mulaita dandro indran. You can probably understand that, those of you who know Malayalam. It's like Malayalam almost. Yeah. He says, first of all, he spoke the truth. And the Vaimori, Ayaniyamro, that's Kamban says. He was speaking Vaimori, the truth. Vaimori means truth. The truth, I mean, yeah, real truth. Vaimori is one way of saying unmai, me, Vaimori, truth. He spoke the truth. So Kamban is just quoted Rama saying, maybe it wasn't worth it, What's it worth when I've caused you such sorrow, he says. He spoke truth, the poet says, and his brother said, sick at heart. Non dasinda. His heart is sick, his mind is sick. He says, Inde kandi, if you think about it, my dear brother, the seed of this grief, Anguram, the seed of this grief was sown long ago. So that was a sort of unusual thing for Lakshmana to say. I think that, what is he thinking about? The seed of this grief was sown long ago. It's a bit like the final night in the Parnashalangam when they tell the story of Dasharatha shooting the boy and the curse and all of that. And then too, by the way, we asked ourselves, you might remember, Madhu and Indu, how Rama knew that story. How does he know? Was it common knowledge in Ayodhya that there was the shapa on Dasharatha? Or maybe somebody in the palace had mentioned it? But how did he know, actually? I think he knew because he saw the Parnashalangam, actually, or read the Artha Prakaram. Something like that. Here too, that seed of this grief was sown long ago. Maybe he's referring to that. Maybe he's thinking about some other thing in the relations between Kaikeyi and Dasharatha, or maybe something from some much earlier birth. I don't know. It's an enigmatic statement. See, listen to these verses. The silence is, you could say, deafening. There's things that are being said, but they're the really important things that are not being said. Right? That's the Kamba Ramayana. It's 10,000 verses pregnant with silence of a particular kind. So then, Rama says something to himself. He says, Ahase takadillai aratti nindre halyambadaridendrum yenninan o haikondravan ullidanokinan so hapantam tudaipadaridalenam. So he said, there's nothing to be done. Ahase takadillai. Nothing we can do. We can't move away from what is right. Ehalyambadaridendrum. That's what he said. We can't move away from what is right. Aratti nindre ehalyan badariren. Right? Then he looked again at the suffering inside this person who had found such joy. Ohai kundavan ul idar nokkinan. He looked at that inner idar inside of this person who had found joy. I guess building the Parnashala was an act of joy, kind of creative act or something like that. And he thought, Sogabandam tudaipadariral. We can't wipe away the knots of sorrow. The knots of sorrow. So, again, I want to say, in the Kamba Ramayana, Raman doesn't say very much. It's very unusual for him to talk at all. And here's a point where he talks, and what he is saying is that there's in this Sogavandam, there's this tremendous grief, It's not quite the Rama we're used to thinking about. Rama usually goes through life, right? Actually, we're seeing a kind of grieving Rama who cannot say or speak the whole grief that he feels, right? But he hints at it. And then he says to his brother one last thing. He says, there's always an end to great riches. What can be lost by this? Think of the endless happiness ahead and what it will bring. This is possibly an ironic statement. Think of the endless happiness ahead. What endless happiness is there ahead? Not in the Ramayana as we know it, right? That's the end of that paddle. So all of this was just an attempt to show you something that came out of a kind of revolution in poetic taste, you could say, and a new aesthetic or artistic sensibility. And what does it include? It includes the fact that he's taken the old grammar and turned it to a new way of expressing all kinds of things. He speaks to the reader about what he is doing, his poems and the music of his poems, and he allows his characters to say things that are always often on the edge of that pregnant silence, you know. That one way of talking about some parts of the Kamba Ramayana. I should stop here, I guess.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Here.
I think when he says to Lakshmana, people will say I did the right thing, but people still say that I did the right thing, right? You know, even today we say, well, yeah, they say I did the right thing. But then he said it wasn't worth it.
You said that Rama doesn't talk much, but he goes through life, stages of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think is why do you think that Rama is given less words in Kamba Ramayana?
See, it's a different Rama. Yeah. This is Rama who is undoubtedly, you know, clearly he's God. He's Mahavishnu. God doesn't talk very much, right? You know, and his responses are often very enigmatic and mysterious. For example, you know, Rama on the way into Mithila, he steps on a rock, turns into Ahalya, you know. So Rama is Mahavishnu, but he doesn't really, I mean, there's a question of what he knows about this. He sees this rock has become a woman, right? And he says, Ennaye, this is really a very strange place, this world, he says, you know, like what happens, you know? He caused it to happen, actually, right? Yes and no, but so every once in a while, something like that. I think that, you know, this is the consciousness of some God, and it's not easily put into words. That's why he's constantly telling us that you have to listen to some other level of whatever words are there. He does speak, however, I have to say, speaks a lot at the end, at the time of the Agni Pariksha. And he speaks in... he speaks in some... he's extremely harsh on Sita. Maybe not quite as harsh as what we saw in the Acharya Chudamani, but he's very harsh. And more interestingly is that Sita speaks back to him in a very kind of passionate way, and she's very angry and she expresses the anger. It's a very, in general, she's a Tamil woman actually. She's a full-blooded Tamil woman, and she speaks her mind. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to say about that package. I wrote an essay about it.
Sita's character is in Kamba Ramayana, is in dominating nature, or very...
I don't think...
Just like a woman of India, like...
No, she's not only like the conventional, traditional, gentle Indian woman, South Indian woman. She's not quite like that. Sometimes she's like that. There are moments when she's like that. She has a lot of guilt. One of the very striking things about Sita, it's also in Valmiki Ramayana, but very strong in Kamban. She's sitting in Lanka in the Ashokamaniga. She's sitting there, and she spends a lot of time, many verses, saying, "Oh, it was all my fault. I made the mistake. I sent him for that deer." She's completely enveloped by this terrible sense of guilt. You know, it's also there in Valmiki, but not quite in the same way. But she's very much of a kind of individualized character in Kamban. Lakshmana also make that.
I can't help but connect it to your book, More Than Real.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm right, but I'm sensing, I spent the whole of last evening reading your book. I'm sensing a lot, connect in terms of perceptions and imagination, and how Poe talks about God, and he can't hide from the senses of a sannyasi, or even with regards to the pearls.
Right.
It's to me, I feel the poet, this is just my take on it, has kind of moved much deeper, and there's, like you said, a sense of consciousness that exists. Am I?
I think that I was kind of trying to say something about that. I think that in the Kamba Ramayana, and I mean, this is perhaps the first book, full book we have in Tamil, which focuses on that, on the way the human mind is put together, how, I mean, it's a kind of modeling of the mind. Afterwards, there's many more like that, you know. I mean, in Tamil, as you go later, it becomes more and more explicit theme. That's what I tried to write about in the book. But already in Kamban, you can feel that that's what he's interested in. It's almost as if they didn't have to go anywhere at all. All of it is happening in some stage inside their minds, you know, and he wants to show you that.
It's very interesting to know that these are very, very old words. And so-called New Age science or whatever is very unfortunately drawing from these concepts. And this is basically completely only what my reading, nothing else. So it's very intriguing. I mean, if somebody who's listening to something like this,
we only just touched a tiny little place of it. There are 10,000 verses, you know. You're very welcome. Yeah. Thank you for listening.
I wish we had a reading. I mean, we continued the reading session.
Yeah, and worked with them. That was lovely. Yeah. We read every morning for an hour. Yeah.
Time and space literature.
It's a marvelous book and worth learning Tamil just to be able to read the Kamba Ramayana.
Like other Ramayana, in Kamban Ramayana, does Ram give any indication that he is the incarnation of?
So no, there's no explicit. I mean, Kamban tells you, but no. You know, there's a difference between the Valmiki Ramayana in that respect, where the question of what Rama knows is a question that keeps coming back, right? He forgets, he's God, but he doesn't know. Like all of us, it's something like that. He forgets it all the time. Every once in a while a moment comes when somebody reminds him, very clearly at the Agni Pariksha. The most powerful one is at the Agni Pariksha, when this whole thing has happened, and then the gods come and they say, also in Shakti Mata, don't you know who you are, right? You know? So for a moment he remembers. That's not like that in the Kamba Ramayana. There's the sense that this is some godlike person whose consciousness we can't really grasp. It's not that he's just forgotten and become human. It's not like that. He's all the way through some form of the God. No, he's all the way through some godly being, but we don't really know what's going on in his heart or in his mind, you know. Except occasionally, these few moments, you know, those few moments. Yeah.
Which has been inherited from the Kamban. Is that right?
What is that?
The breast, cutting the breast also only in Kamban.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. From Shulman. That's right. Yeah. That's there. The nose, the ears, and the breast. That's right.
So I think the Tadaga's sons.
That I don't know. Yeah.
Where the space where the Parmashala is being, when the Lakshmana cut the branches of the tree, I think whose son is being killed because of that branch falls on the...
I don't think that's in Kamba Ramayana. I don't think so. I have to check. I don't think so.
They're singing the Kamba Ramayana.
Well, we saw. They're singing, that's an old... I don't know how much they're actually singing of Kamba Ramayana. They're singing some verses, no doubt.
They have actually, you know why it was happening. They say that the grandfather knew 100%, the son knows 60%, these people know 20%. This was a kind of modified, it was not a...
But they always show that story.
That story is there in Tolpapakuli? I see. Yeah.
I think so. It's
Maybe.
Because of some kind of revenge that has some connection like that. When Lakshmana cut the branches for the Parmashala, Shurpanakha's son who was playing beneath the tree.
Oh, really?
Yes, he was killed because of the one big branch falls on that.
I can check it. I don't think it's there in Kamba Ramayana. I don't think so. But in general, I want to say
They are singing, I thought it's from Kamba Ramayana.
they may have taken. I don't think so. The changes in the story. There are changes, but they're not very important. That's not what is great in Kamban.
But the thing is that Kamba is making some justification for the Shulman.
Yeah. Right.
Attacking Lakshmana.
I think.
It has a good reason anyway.
Anyway, it is there, but I am saying that he is making some more very
prelude.
He's I think possibly the first poet to discuss, to bring Lalita, to bring Shurpanakha is that Lalita, beautiful figure. They're wonderful verses. Yeah.
Actually, I can't read through the Tamil, but as they sing usually, then I thought that maybe it's from Kamba.
I'll check into it. I don't know. I don't think so.
Actually, in the later period, many things actually they have added according to their situation and the culture and also the political law.
I want to see.
Many places are there.
Like in Ahalya Vrittanta, in Mahabharata there is nothing like that. There is different persons in Valmiki Ramayana.
Yeah, it's different.
Yes. Like this in Mahabharata, Draupadi. Generally people tells me about this folklore or like this. The Draupadi laughed at Duryodhana. That's why it. But in Mahabharata, nothing is like that.
Actually, even the Vastrakshama they say is interpolation.
Yeah, but you know what that means? That since you mentioned it, that's if you believe in the Western model of a critical edition. I don't believe in it for India, So I don't know what it means to say. So that's again. So the Bhandarkar Oriental Institute edition. But I think it's a kind of fake text. Actually, I don't really believe in it.
See, when do you remember when we started this the Mahabharata seminar in Delhi? That time, first time I had heard this about this Veer Ramayana. It was totally different from the
Who said?
Veer Ramayana. Veer Mahabharata. It's totally different, quite opposite of this Mahabharata. Totally different. Totally this woman dominating nature everywhere.
Because
Man character
in
is
society, in a tribal society, woman character is always dominating. The male has to give the double. Girl's father has to collect the double.
It's very beautiful singing culture. It's very nice to hear.
Yes.
You like to hear the verses? They're beautiful. Yeah, they're very lovely. I think so. They're very musical verses.
It is in some Vritta.
Yes, it's in what's called Viruttam, which is a set of possible meters. They're not like the Sanskrit meters, so there's no connection at all. These are Tamil
Sometimes
meters.
the story also differs from this one.
I've said, sometimes there are these divergencies, but
because the Lanka and Tamil, the relations and the correlations of this.
I think that the differences in the story are not very important. They exist, but they're not so important. The real difference is in the tone, the texture, the feel of it, the idea behind it. That is really the difference, I think.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
David.
pleasure.
It was
Thank you.
wonderful that
Yeah.
you-
Thank you for inviting me. And I think what you're doing is marvelous. Yeah.